Welcome back to Between the Levees. I'm joined today by Mr. Jake Carter. He is in HR and recruiting for ACBL. He's been there for a couple of years. First things first, Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Listened to probably 4 or 5 episodes at this point and really gotten into it. So excited to be here.
Thank you. Now, had you heard about the show before? I think you said a couple of guys you worked with came to you and said this might be a good thing for you to try.
Absolutely, yeah. I can't remember. I follow quite a few of the Mississippi towboat face groups, all kinds of Facebook groups as far as towboating. And I can't remember if I came across it on Facebook or where it was, but from episode 1, I've kind of been following along. And then once we got into some ACBL guys, of course, I had to give it a listen. So I guess the last one I listened to was Captain Travis Valence today
Okay.
on the way home.
What'd you think about that one?
I liked it a lot. Not to say that I didn't like it any more than the others, but I think in terms of recruiting and everything like that, Travis really spoke to and has a good idea of really what's going on. So outstanding, and his journey is unbelievable as well. So you don't typically see a guy go from port captain back to the wheelhouse, but that's really cool. And he's a fantastic leader that ACBL is lucky to have.
Well, great, man. All right. So first things first, tell me, of course, I know you went to college for what you're doing now. What spurred your interest in that initially?
Recruiting as a whole, I guess it did really start in college, in undergrad. So I was at a small college for undergrad. It was either, go home every day or stay on campus, get involved, get into organizations. And, of course, it's a lot more fun that way. So I was involved in a handful of organizations. I was in a fraternity, and I became just really good at recruiting. I ended up being the recruiting chair for several different organizations throughout undergrad. And not only did I feel I was pretty good at it, I was able to get guys and gals in the door and really, help people find an organization they love. But I enjoyed doing it. I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people, love getting to know people and meeting new people. So that's where it all started, I would say, undergrad. And eventually I kept finding my way into recruiting jobs, quite frankly, whether I wanted to or not. So it's something I love doing. It's something I'm still very passionate about, of course, to this day.
Well, tell me about your introduction to ACBL and this industry, and maybe, I don't know, if you were captivated by any certain areas immediately, kind of like I was.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's where the story kind of gets crazy. I never imagined going through undergrad or even during my master's degree going into recruiting full time. I imagined going into maybe organizational development, or a lot of my master's degree is in survey research and stuff like that, which I still use a little bit to this day. But um, as I was going in, I had a recruiting job up in Cincinnati where I was getting my master's degree. It was cool. I was coming up on graduation. I wasn't sure if I was going to stay up there and try to make a career out of that. Very different landscape than I'm recruiting in right now. I was actually working for a clinical research organization and recruiting pharmacists and doctors. They were developing the COVID vaccine. All kinds of crazy stuff was going on during this time. But I guess it was probably July of 2021. I decided that I was going to move back here. I'm originally from Southern Indiana, Georgetown area, probably 20 miles west of Jeffersonville, where ACBL is headquartered. And I truly had no clue what I was going to do. I was going to move back here regardless if I had a job back here or not, and try to pick up from there and find something back here at home. And luckily enough, one of those said fraternity brothers that I had in during undergrad, he worked for ACBL. And I had never heard of ACBL. I'd never heard of American Commercial Barge Line, didn't know that there was a barge company in Jeffersonville. I knew of Jeff Boat, which I believe most ACBL folks do. I had quite a few folks in my family that worked for Jeff Boat, so I knew that existed. Had no clue the parent company was right back on the hill that owned Jeff Boat and all that. But my buddy said, why don't you? I don't know if there is an HR position open, but I can point you in the right direction, tell you who to send everything to. And it was probably a month-long waiting period, waiting to figure out if there was going to be a position open and everything like that. And eventually sat down, had a couple interviews, and found out that they wanted me to come on at ACBL, and I was happy to do so. Happy to land a job back home. I found it very interesting. Growing up close to the Ohio River, I had always seen barges and boats. I had family members that built the barges and boats at Jeff Boat, but never really put two and two together. So moved back, started at ACBL, and originally started on the corporate side. I was hiring folks for headquarters, different positions throughout headquarters, anything from intern to I hired a few folks at the director level as well. And that's where it all started as far as ACBL, was kind of on the corporate side.
And are you focused now more on or all on the marine side?
Yeah, so probably October of 21, the guy who was the recruiter for the vessel side, he ended up accepting a position elsewhere, and he instilled quite a bit of knowledge into me while I was there. Really helped me learn a lot, even though I wasn't on the vessel side. Took the time to walk me through a lot of the hiring process for the vessel side, tell me about how recruiting was. Did a great job of setting things up for me and laying a solid foundation before I fully moved over there. And when he left in October of 21, we were, you could say it was the middle of COVID. We were kind of coming out of COVID at that point, but in terms of recruiting numbers, we were pretty far in the hole. We were missing a few positions there, missing a few folks to be in those positions. So that's when I started. I do deckhand recruiting and hiring only. I'm not too involved in tankermen or engineers or captains, pilots, anything like that. Mostly entry-level deckhand hiring, and I help mostly with mainline as well. I move some of the fleet candidates around and point them to the right recruiter, make sure to help them find the way to the right place. But yeah, October 21, we were looking for quite a few deckhands and started digging out of that hole at that point.
What are the biggest issues you've seen over the last couple of years in recruiting, in getting people in the door and keeping them in the door? And if you can, I guess share with me some initiatives maybe that have been put into play to improve those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was crazy. I'll speak in terms of, I guess, ACBL at first, and then in terms of the industry as a whole, because I think they are a little different. The first thing is, I heard Captain James Edwards and I believe it was the assistant engineer that was on here as well, mentioned that there was a recruiting problem. And I would say industry-wide and ACBL especially, it's not necessarily a recruiting problem. We get a lot of applications, I'll put it that way, especially for the deckhand position. I would say that's probably our most applied to job that we have. So I get more applications than I know what to deal with. I think really today, in terms of ACBL and the industry as a whole, it is 100% a retention problem. And I've heard everything. I agree with Captain Travis Valence that maybe it is the nature of the game. It is just this industry. Turnover has always been crazy. And at the same time, we are working on some initiatives to try to retain our top talent, try to keep those guys that have been out there for a while and figure out how to replicate that in the recruiting field. I'll say when I initially took over deckhand recruiting and hiring in 2021, we were pretty far in the hole. We were really looking to fill positions fast. And I think that's what, I'm speaking for a lot of different companies when I say that. Pretty much everybody was in the hole at that point and looking to bounce back out of COVID and start recruiting and filling those positions again. After a couple months of just really trying to get people in the door, I started to kind of focus on making sure guys knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. And I believe Captain Valence mentioned this as well, that, do you play this game of trying to tell people, hey, this is exactly what it's like out there. It might be scary, it might not, and possibly scare them off, or do you make it sound like it's the greatest thing in the world and you can work your way up to, the wheelhouse and everything like that. So at that point in time, it was probably March or April of 22. And I started to put together a virtual info session. So kind of like this, not on Zoom, but Microsoft Teams. I would invite all of our candidates or however many had applied in a week's worth of time to attend a virtual info session where I talk to them about every aspect of the deckhand job. Everything from here's what's required to this is exactly what life is going to be like out on the boats, to here's how you can progress up the company. Here's exactly how much you're going to be earning while you're out there. Here's what you could be making, benefits, retirement, everything. All the way to ending that presentation with an RS1 preview or training, entry-level deckhand training preview. So that's one big thing that I put in place. I wanted to make sure guys knew exactly what they were getting themselves into, and at the same time, feel comfortable, gain some trust with the candidate to say, hey, I'm giving you everything up front. This is your decision to make. And my biggest thing was being honest. So I did include, this isn't the most glorious job when you start out there as an entry-level deckhand. But the greatest part about this industry, and something that is truly industry-wide, is that you can come in with no GED, high school diploma, not much, no training. You don't have to have any experience to start as an entry-level deckhand at ACBL. And truly, if you put in the effort, determination, motivation into this job, you can take yourself wherever you want to. And that's how every leader out there is. Everybody started out on the deck and worked their way to where they want to be. So the info session helped a lot. I don't know if it necessarily helped in terms of retention at all, but in terms of, I guess, weeding folks out, figuring out who really wanted to be in or not, was determined between them going to that info session and then following an interview. So as long as they showed up to the info session, they were getting an interview with us. From there, they go through the pre-employment process. We've done quite a bit with that as well to get it down to as quickly as possible to get them into class. I think that was a huge issue as well. I don't know. For the most part, when I've been doing this, it's taken anywhere from maybe less than a week to 2 weeks for a guy to go through the info session, get an interview, and then clear the physical and drug screen, get a TWIC, and go down to training. But I always hear that was a huge issue, was guys having to wait so long to get into training and everything like that. So really honing that process down, getting that as quick as possible, making sure guys were informed. We were being honest, telling everybody everything up front. That was the main goal at first, and that's carried on as far as our natural application. So people who are applying through the company website or through Indeed. I guess in terms of things interesting that we're trying to do now and branch off into, there are plenty of other companies that do what I'm about to say, but we have implemented somewhat of a road show where we're going to various locations throughout the Midwest, South, and not really the Northeast, but the Eastern side of the United States, and covering different cities, having hiring events at these cities. So nothing really new or extremely innovative there, but it's just a good way to get out and branch into places where you might not necessarily get natural applications from, where there are hardworking people who do want a great job and are willing to go out there and want to move up and everything like that. So that's kind of been the new big thing we've gotten into. But again, nothing really crazy there.
Has there been any notable change, I guess, in the quality of candidate that comes through to the RS1 course?
Yeah, that's the thing too. RS1, a lot of folks get into the mindset that RS1, by the time a candidate gets to RS1, they should be good to go. They should determine whether or not, before they even step into that building or the facility down in Convent, they should determine, hey, I am good to go for this job. I'm going to at least give it, 3 hitches. That's the standard that we always say. Give it 3 hitches to figure out whether this is truly for you. But RS1 is a place where a person can figure out whether or not this is truly for them. Captain Valence touched on this a little bit as well. You're really not going to know truly what a candidate is going to be like until they get out there on the river. Even on the pad, the pad is on land. It's a sawed off barge top on land, and even on the pad, toting rigging and everything like that, they might still be trying to give it a go, and it takes truly getting out there on the water. So in terms of, I don't know, weeding folks out through RS1 and everything like that, it has been a better quality candidate that has gotten all the way to RS1. But in terms of between there, we are getting a lot of good applications as far as natural applications and the recruiting roadshow. We get a lot of quality folks in, and a lot of experienced guys looking to move over, which is always great. And I think we have a really solid system in place now to make sure we're getting the best fit, and the candidate is getting the best fit in terms of a company. So for instance, any experienced guy that applies to ACBL, I am not, I mean, you could say I'm qualified. A recruiter, the best thing they can do is go do the job or talk to folks involved in the job. I've done all that, but still, I think it is better that someone who has been out on the deck interview a guy who has experience. So any experienced guy that we have, I'm typically either setting up an interview with my HR rep down in Cairo, who is a former mate off the boat, or I'm setting it up with a port captain who, of course, has plenty of years of experience. So we're truly getting a feel of exactly what our folks out on the boat, what our team members out on the boat want in terms of an experienced guy moving over. On the other side, inexperienced folks, like I said, we're getting really good applications that come through, and we're getting so many applications. I would say majority of the folks that apply are coming from oil field type jobs, maybe offshore jobs, welders, other barge companies all the time, even guys that only worked a few hitches and stuff like that as well. So it's a better candidate, definitely. And there's more to go through as well. But yeah, I think all in all, it's really starting to look up. I think COVID brought quite a few people down and got people really negatively thinking about recruiting and everything like that. But it's starting to come out of it at this point, I would say.
Do you have any idea on sort of retention specifics? I mean, do you have guys coming in that don't make it 3 hitches with you? Have you seen an improvement in the numbers of people that go through RS1, survive their 3 hitches, and are still working for the company?
Yes. So in terms of overall retention, I don't know the exact numbers, and I don't have those in front of me, but we have seen retention increase overall, especially going from entry level to, moving up to deckhand 2, deckhand 1, moving up the ranks with ACBL. So we are seeing guys, especially now coming in, staying longer. and that's been really great. But I think what's still there is keeping the guys who have been here for 15 years, for 20 years. And honestly, a lot of the times I see these guys leave, they're not leaving to go to another company. They are leaving because they found something closer to home that is on land. You know, you got to think about this too. When a young guy starts out, maybe he doesn't necessarily have a family or anything like that, and as he goes on in his career and he's earning more money and stuff like that, he's able to finally settle down, and I believe that definitely changes things. So that's a big issue as well. But you know, that's life. That is the natural life cycle. So.
Well, what's been one of the most surprising things you've seen in this industry now?
Uh, it's I say nothing surprises me anymore. I see something crazy every single day. I couldn't believe it. My company, ACBL, gave me the opportunity to go through deckhand training. It was something I was really passionate about when I took this over, and we're a small but mighty team. So when I have the few chances to get out in the field and get on boats and go through deckhand training, it's something I really love to do. I want to be as close to the job as possible, even if that means going to the training and doing the job. That's the best part, because then I can sit here and say, hey, I know exactly what you're going to be doing out there on the boat. I know exactly what you're going to be going through. It's going to be hot, really hot some days. It's going to be freezing cold some days. You're going to be the ratchet's going to be digging into your shoulder, the wires digging into your shoulder. So that's probably one of the coolest things. Just getting on boats whenever I get the opportunity to, knowing, you know, so many other companies out there exist and everything like that. Too much to soak in just 2 years. It feels like I've been there for 5, but I'm only coming up on 2. It'll be, I guess, Thursday, celebrating 2 years with ACBL. So in terms of recruiting, nothing really crazy. I don't know. You talk to a lot of folks out there, they're always, you know, especially guys from other companies. It's guys jumping over for $1 more over here, $2 more over here. So that's just something I don't think is ever going to change. That's a crazy part of the industry, but you know, I get it. I totally understand as a recruiter as well, but that's just part of it.
Yeah, I've spent 8 years in the industry now, and it's all been shoreside, but I can tell you for sure, I definitely learned more out there on the water on those boats with those guys. Um, Glad to hear that. Do you have anything else to share about your company, the industry, the show? Anything else to say this evening?
No, I feel like everybody always says no, and then they think of an idea, but it's been great. I've really appreciated this. I think, you know, like I said, when I originally introduced myself to you, I think this is not only a great way to hear from other folks in the industry at other companies and everything like that, and gather information from that, but also it is a great educational tool, and it's very innovative in terms of, you know, podcasts are becoming a huge thing if they aren't already. So branching into this, I guess, new age compared to most other modes of communication is awesome, and very thankful you're doing this, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Jake. That'll do it.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
You too.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.